Tēnā koutou katoa, and welcome to everyone. My name is Andrew Johnson. I'm the Deputy Head of the New Zealand Space Agency within New Zealand's Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. On this chilly day, we'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman and other members of her delegation, as well as to our colleagues in the US Embassy, the National Emergency Management Agency and MB. Space cooperation was prominent on the agenda when the Prime Minister met with President Biden and Vice President Harris in Washington in May. In particular, they welcomed the conclusion of negotiations on a bilateral framework agreement to deepen space cooperation. We're delighted that Deputy Secretary Sherman and Honourable Stuart Nash, Minister with responsibility for space, will now sign the agreement and exchange T-shirts.
Shall we?
Shall we? What is the date?
I've been running around the world. I have no idea.
August 9th.
The 9th.
Thank you. This is the fun part.
Deputy Secretary, New Zealand Space Agency shirt.
Love it. Great. And NASA?
Fantastic. I've wanted one of these since I was 5 years old.
You want to be an astronaut?
Who didn't?
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Secretary.
I'd now like to invite the Honourable Kieran McAnulty, our Minister for Emergency Management, and Deputy Secretary Sherman to exchange copies of the Memorandum of Cooperation between the US Federal Emergency Management Agency and the New Zealand National Emergency Management Agency.
Here we are. We've exchanged.
Just like that.
Okay, great. I'd now like to invite the Ministers and the Deputy Secretary to say a few words about these.
I think we have one more thing to do.
Oh, sorry,
I
the
want my
windbreakers.
I want my windbreaker.
My apologies.
I've been waiting all morning for the windbreaker. It is really necessary for today.
Yes, no, absolutely.
Madam Deputy Secretary, here is a NEMA jacket, our National Emergency Management Agency. Very prized possession.
Indeed. I think I'll have to fight my husband for it. That's so cool. And, of course, our FEMA windbreaker. Not quite as nifty as that, but pretty cool.
I was just worried about getting the right size, but I see you do have large kids, so that's perfect. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to note one thing. The reason why we exchange T-shirts is because the rocket launches are done in Mahia, and it is always fine in Mahia. It's part of my local constituency. So I've
Got it.
Okay, sorry about that. Slightly jumping the gun there. But I'd now like to invite the Ministers and the Deputy Secretary to say a few words about these milestone agreements in our bilateral relationship, starting with Minister Nash.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou, ka nua te mihi kia koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Look, it is an absolute pleasure to be here with Deputy Secretary of State Sherman for the signing of this agreement on how we're going to work together on the use of aerospace and outer space for peaceful purposes. Cooperation with the United States of America on space is an important and growing component of our relationship. We look forward to strengthening existing space collaborations between New Zealand and the US, as well as the development of new collaborations as a result of this framework agreement. The agreement recognises the value of international cooperation in the peaceful uses of airspace and outer space and highlights the desirability of enhanced cooperation between the parties in space science, the use of space for research in earth sciences, exploration, aeronautics and operational Earth observation for meteorology, oceanography and environmental monitoring with the potential to benefit all countries. I'm pleased that the framework agreement will provide greater strategic focus to our outer space relationship across a number of key areas, including space science, Earth observation, education and space sustainability. The framework agreement will enable a deeper and more streamlined collaboration with NASA across the New Zealand science research system. It will make it easier for NASA to negotiate collaborative research projects with New Zealand researchers. The agreement will also provide a simpler pathway for NASA to conduct scientific activities in New Zealand through GST and customs duty exemptions. Once again, it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you, Deputy Secretary, and I think this agreement is a big step forward for both of our countries and our space programs. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister.
I'd now like to invite Minister McAnulty.
Thank you, tēnā koutou katoa. Good day, everyone, and thanks very much for being here today. I'd like to especially acknowledge Deputy Secretary Wendy, Sherman, and of course the United States mission staff. It really is a pleasure to meet you. I'm really pleased to announce the signing of the Memorandum of Cooperation between our respective national emergency management agencies. Our government is committed to continually strengthening our emergency management system, and this Memorandum of Cooperation will help to bolster disaster resilience and reduce disaster risk in both countries. Over the past 2 decades, disasters have increased in number and severity, requiring enhanced international cooperation and stronger international relationships. And this relationship is not a new one. Our emergency management agencies have had close relationships for many years, and we've supported each other during times of crisis. In 2018, we deployed fire personnel to help combat large wildfires in the US, and of course, we will always be grateful for the support that the United States provided following the 2011 Christchurch earthquake. Within 24 hours of the earthquake, a USA disaster assistance response team, including 70 specialised urban search and rescue personnel, had been deployed to join the search for survivors and victims, help complete damage assessments and provide humanitarian assistance. And I want to acknowledge that this event personally impacted many, including US citizens. We have particularly strong working relationships around tsunami preparedness and response, and our countries share information and data with each other, including that from New Zealand's network of Dart Buoys. This assists with providing warnings to our communities and those in the Pacific. This new Memorandum of Cooperation between New Zealand's National Emergency Management Agency and the US Federal Emergency Management Agency will help to strengthen disaster resilience and reduce disaster risk in both our countries. New Zealand and the United States have a lot in common in regards to the hazards we face, our emergency management structures, and the important role Indigenous communities play in emergency response and recovery. Best practices and lessons learned from past emergencies and boost opportunities to engage in joint research, as well as conferences. A resilient global community. Thank you.
And Deputy Secretary Sherman.
Thank you. First, thank you, Minister Nash. Thank you, Minister McNulty. And I have to say, I was in the Christchurch earthquake, and your Air Force evacuated a group of us out of Christchurch. It was an experience that is one that one wants to have once in one's lifetime. But I can't begin to tell you how wonderful all of your colleagues were in helping us through that very difficult time. So thank you.
That would mean a lot to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you all. I want to begin by saying how wonderful it is to be back in Aotearoa, I'll never say it right, New Zealand. Just now, I was very honored to meet with Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. We discussed the strong bilateral partnership between the United States and New Zealand on a wide range of issues, from our cooperation on maintaining a free, open, secure, and peaceful Indo-Pacific region to holding Putin accountable for his war of aggression against Ukraine. I want to thank the Prime Minister for her hospitality and warm welcome. Later today, I look forward to meeting Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade Chief Executive Chris Seed and diplomatic representatives from the Pacific Island countries. This is my final stop of a trip to Samoa, Tonga, Solomon Islands, Australia, and New Zealand. Throughout my trip, I have focused on listening to the people of these Pacific countries on how we can partner on a wider range of shared priorities, from climate and health to security and economic cooperation. I'll be taking all of your ideas back with me to Washington. Just now, I have been very proud to represent the United States in the conclusion of 2 agreements that will further strengthen our long-standing cooperation. I'm so pleased to have Emergency Management Minister Kieran McNulty here to talk about our Memorandum of Cooperation on Emergency Management. Our countries have deep expertise on emergency management and disaster response, both in our own communities and in assisting other nations. As I said, at every moment during Christchurch, despite the tragedy unfolding all around, every Kiwi we asked for assistance was immediately helpful to our cohort of lost Americans. That experience gave me firsthand appreciation for how important it is to work together on emergency management. This Memorandum of Cooperation will help us to do it even better. Second, the Minister of Economic Development, Stuart Nash, and I just signed, as you saw, a U.S.-New Zealand Space Framework Agreement. This agreement will strengthen cooperation between the New Zealand Space Agency, NASA, and other U.S. agencies, and it will bring our nations closer together in our work to ensure outer space is developed for peaceful purposes. Last year, New Zealand signed the Artemis Accords, which promote the peaceful exploration of deep space. We look forward to working together on the Artemis program so we can continue the next phase of space exploration, back to the moon and beyond. Again, I want to thank Prime Minister Ardern and all the government officials who I'm meeting with in Wellington today. And I look forward to all the ways the United States and New Zealand will continue and deepen and expand our incredible partnership in the years to come. Thank you very much.
So now we'll open it up to questions.
My question is to Madam Deputy Secretary. You said that in the Solomon Islands that the US President Joe Biden sees strong ties with Pacific Island countries as a priority. If so, do you agree that Kiribasa's withdrawal from the Pacific Islands Forum is a top order issue, and how will you convince them to rejoin?
Well, thank you very much for the question. Indeed, President Biden, Vice President Harris, who spoke to the Pacific Island Forum, Secretary Blinken, who made a stop when things opened up in Fiji, and now my trip, as well as Senior Coordinator for the Indo-Pacific, Kurt Campbell, and Assistant Secretary Dan Crittenbrink, and one of my colleagues, Catherine Paik, were here as well, going to the Pacific Islands some months ago. We also have representation in the Pacific Islands, and as the Vice President announced, we will be opening 3 embassies, one in Kiribati. And so obviously we think it is important for Kiribati to be part, and it is, of the Pacific Island family. I think the PIF will hopefully help Kiribati find its way home.
Deputy Secretary, Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida has been raided by the FBI. What's your reaction to that, and can you explain how significant this is perhaps?
So I've just seen the news headlines. I would suggest that you talk to our Department of Justice, which is responsible for the FBI, if all of that is factually correct, and ask them for a response.
You've spoken quite a lot about New Zealand's strong relationship with the US. Is there a time or a place where we are no longer suspended from ANZUS?
You know, we have an incredible partnership with New Zealand. And what matters is what our actions are with each other. We respect New Zealand's independent foreign policy, but we obviously are quite like-minded. New Zealand has been stalwart when it comes to saying to Vladimir Putin that he should not unjustly and horrifically invade a sovereign country and try to determine its borders and its political choices for its future. Indeed, we have worked together to deal with counterterrorism efforts. We have worked together in space, in emergency management. We have worked together to support the Pacific Islands and help them find a way forward that meets the ambitions of their own citizens and their own people. New Zealand has joined, as the United States has, in the Partnership in the Blue Pacific, a coordinated effort to really make resources available in the Pacific. I could go on and on. We are both launch partners for the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. So we have an incredible bond, and I'm just delighted to be here and to deepen those bonds in every way we can, in space, in emergency management, and in so many other ways.
Madam Deputy Secretary, you just come from the Solomon Islands, and the Prime Minister there, Sogavare, did not attend the ceremony that you attended on Sunday. Do you consider that a snub, and also do you feel like you're losing the battle for influence there to China?
So as I said to Prime Minister Sogavare, I see this as a missed opportunity for the Prime Minister. The events all day on Sunday raised up the way that Australia, New Zealand, the United States, the United Kingdom worked with Solomon Islanders, both civilians, coast watchers. Solomon Islanders paid a big price for the Battle of Guadalcanal, along with all of our soldiers. And I told him I was sorry for him because I thought he missed an opportunity to raise up that strong partnership and the fight for freedom that allowed the Solomon Islands to exist as it is today. So it's really sorrow for him that he chose or was compelled to, or his schedule didn't permit him to attend. I think it was a missed opportunity for him.
And the influence with China, are you winning that battle, do you feel?
You know, I don't think it's not so much a battle. I think that countries try to have relations with every country they believe can help them move forward. And the United States does not ask any country to choose between us and China or any other country and China. What we do ask that we all have a level playing field, that the rules-based order that was put in place after that tumultuous World War II that cost so much in lives and treasure for countries all over the world, that we remember that war is no solution, that there not be escalation, that we all manage our differences in peace and diplomacy and try to find our way forward, but we do so using that rules-based international order because, in fact, it was that very order that has helped China to rise, and it ought to be there for everyone.
Madam Deputy Secretary, did you specifically discuss China's influence in the Pacific with Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern? And do you feel like America has in recent times dropped the ball when it comes to engagement in the Pacific?
I think that it has always been important for the United States to engage in the Pacific. When President Biden campaigned and when he became president, he said it was a priority to rebuild our alliances, our partnerships, our relations with regional organizations around the world. He instructed all of us to do that. And that is what we have been engaged in, the Vice President, Secretary Blinken, every member of our cabinet. And so we are a Pacific nation. We always have been. And so we believe, as I have said to students who I love to meet with everywhere I go, because they're the future, not me, but they are, that the future will be written here in the Pacific. President Biden believes that. Secretary Blinken believes that. Vice President Harris. And so we are doubling down on our investment here in the Pacific, our relationships, our partnerships, regional organizations, the Pacific Island Forum, in other parts of Asia, the Quad, ASEAN, APEC. We are using every vehicle possible to collaborate, partners in the Blue Pacific. So every way we possibly can, APEC, to move that agenda forward so that everybody can prosper in peace and security.
And did you specifically
Last question.
Did you specifically discuss?
Well, of course we discuss the Pacific.
And specifically China's growing
Of
influence?
course, we discussed China, and we discussed all the Pacific Islands that I went to. We discussed Ukraine and Russia. New Zealand may be in this part of the world, but they are an influence all over the world, looking after the interests of the people of New Zealand.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary.
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Yeah.